Hello everyone. I was going to take a minute and show you how to tear down a DCP truck. There's probably several out there that already know how to do it. I was just going to take a minute to show the ones that really don't know. This is the way I do it. There's several ways, but this truck will be stretched out a little bit. It'll get a little bit of a wheelbase on it. A few aftermarket parts will go on it. The frame will be painted white, which it already is white, but it has this frame cover, deck plate cover on it, and I'm not a fan of that style. So basically we're going to take the bunk off tonight, pull the fifth wheel, possibly pull the tanks and the stacks off and the cab off. So let's get at it. Here's a Phillips head screwdriver. There is two screws underneath the bottom of the truck. One is underneath the drive shaft, one is right below the cab. You just take these off. And that takes your bunk off. Most the DCP trucks, if they have a bunk on them, they have a screw in them. You can take your screw that you took off and put it back into the bunk so you don't lose it. That's the bottom of the bunk. The motor has two lines that goes to the breather that is set inside the cab. Also, you have the stacks, which have pins on each side that also go into the cab. So I'm not concerned about these if they break, but most of the time they come off pretty easy. You just pull them apart and they drop off. There's your holes on your side. Most of the time you can take the screw out of the cab and it will allow you to remove the cab. The fenders are held in with they take and melt the plastic internally. You can see there and there where they melt the plastic on the tanks, and they do the same thing on the steps and the fenders. You just take and just break that off. And that takes the plastic off, so the tanks are easier to remove. And you have two square holes in which the tank's set into. Now you just take your flathead and get in behind the tank, and that pulls the tanks off. The fifth wheel has got a pin on each side. You just get a flathead and pop it up. A lot of the fifth wheel are now plastic. You can also get them. A lot of the older trucks, they had metal fifth wheels on them. And then we're wanting to take this off as the main thing. See how bad it messes the paint up. I wasn't a fan of the green top. That's why I'm changing it. This one had a little bit of glue underneath the deck plate and the frame. It was just holding it on. Next, we have two places here that we're going to have to drill out to get this T-bar off. These can sometimes, when you go to drill them out, they your drill bit will walk on you, which it's no big deal as long as you can salvage the T-bar. I'm just going to drill these two rivets out. There's one there and one there. I believe it's already loose enough to. I'm going to take a flathead and you get in between here, and that removes your T-bar. So there's that. We also have a rivet here and a rivet here, and also the plastic was melted on each side. You can get your screwdriver in behind it, and most time it'll just pry out. All I'm doing, I know this is not in the camera, but I'm just pulling that apart, and I just took a screwdriver in behind here and lifted up on the rear double hump fenders. Next, now also there is a spring here, a spring here. That is what your suspension is on these trucks. A lot of the guys, when we do this, we remove the springs. We want to get the truck as low as we can, so we're not too worried about losing them. If they drop, I mean, most of mine go in a trash can. And you just take your wheels and spin them backwards of each other, and it'll break loose, and you'll feel it when it breaks loose. I have a set of wheel pullers, but I wind up breaking the hub on the back here. I usually pull them out, so if I can, I usually just try to twist them apart and take them loose that way. And once you start twisting it, you'll feel it grab and get a little tight, and you know that the knurl, there's a knurl on the end of these axles, and that's what holds the wheels onto the axle. A lot of the older run trucks, they had just a smooth style axle, and they was fairly easy to pull out. Now I'm going to remove this suspension here, and once again just take a screwdriver, and that one's already loose, so I'm not concerned about it. The springs, that is one of the springs. Set it to the side. Now we have our steps we need to remove. Same thing, they have black little spots there where they melted the plastic when they mounted them onto the truck. If they break, it's no big deal. You just make sure when you put your step back on, you try to center it where it was at. You just take and scrape that away. Most of the time I just grab it and pull it. Got to keep the pins with it, so that's a good thing. Same old thing on the other side. You just want to knock the now I'm gonna back up for a second and say this. You don't have to tear a truck all the way down when you stretch one. You can cut the frame rail and just slide your brass. I use brass. A lot of people use styrene, but I just feel that brass is more rigid, and it helps the truck from sagging. But what you're going to do, I'm not going to do it tonight, but you will take and cut your frame in half, find you a center from this point to this point, cut it in half all the way through. I take a Dremel with a sanding disc, and I sand all this down, top, bottom, and on the sides, to allow my brass to bond to the metal. And the reason I tear them all the way down is because I'll strip this frame, get all the paint off, and once I have it stripped, I'll stretch it, and then I'll prime it. And if I have to do any body work, I'll fill some holes in or what have you, and then I'll prime it once the body work's done, and I'll start painting my color on it. Once that's dried, I will clear coat it and then reassemble. Bumpers, the same thing. Any of the plastic parts that are on these trucks, they have that melted plastic on the back sides of the frame or on the front here. I'm not concerned about this because I'll put a new bumper on the truck. Like I said, you just have to get the plastic off. See, I broke this one because I didn't scrape it. But if you did break it, it's no big deal. Put your little dab of glue on that, set the truck on the ground, and then put it back together. Just hold it with your glue, and then it will be okay. Next thing, I'm going to pull the hood pins. I'm not going to pull the front suspension at the moment. I'm going to wait on that step. But there is pins here on the front of the hood hinge and a pin here on the front of the hood hinge, and that's what allows the hood to oscillate back and forth. I have these old dikes that I use. Most time you can just get up underneath it and kind of work it back and forth, and you'll feel the pin starting to release and pull out. There's that one. So there's one pin. If you was to lose a pin, it's no big deal. You can use styrene rod, brass rod, and just drill through the holes on the frame. And once I get this out, I will show you. Now, if you break the hood, that's a total different subject. The hood hinge. That is something you don't want to do. I'm going to leave this pin in because I'm going to put the hood back on. Nothing's going to be changed with this, so I'll just leave that in. That's no big deal. The motor, I usually get underneath here, and you have a radiator. So there's a groove, and these usually, you have a 50-50 chance with these coming out good and not tearing apart, because the motors are in two different pieces. They have a seam that runs here and runs across all the way around. You can, once you pull the motor out, you can. Try to keep your pins if you can, but that's all it is. Just work it out slowly. Don't be in no hurry. So that is teardown of a DCP truck. It can get more involved if you decide to do a repaint on the truck or what have you. It just really depends on what you're doing. But that's just a general way of how I tear down a truck, all your parts and pieces. I will try to do a video of cutting it in half, cutting it in half, having the frame stripped down. Before I put it in before I cut it, I'll strip the frame and get it all cleaned up, and then I will cut the truck in half, and we will do the wheelbase stretch on it. So there's your quick little video. Hope to have more videos coming out. So hope everyone has a good evening, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.